It's Skits Music Crime. Please like, share, and subscribe. Right, today's case is about one of the Canada's youngest SK named Cody Legebokoff. He's sometimes referred to as the youngest SK in the media, but that title actually goes to Peter Woodcock, who brutally unalived three children in Toronto at the age of 17. But that's a story for another time. Cody's case is extremely unusual because he was so young when he first became a multiple unaliver. But according to the Serial Unaliver Information Centre, started by Dr. Michael Mode, who is a professor at professor of psychology at Radford University. The average age for male serial unalivers is 27 and a half. There's usually an unstable childhood as well as escalation periods of crimes that involve taking move and more risks before their first unaliving. In Cody's case, there was none of this. He had a relatively normal home life and then went straight into unaliving at the age of 19. So this story takes place in the Netleco region of British Columbia, which begins in central British Columbia and continues up to the border of the Yukon Territory. The region contains thousands of lakes, and although it contains the second largest land area, it has the smallest population of the regions of British Columbia. That accounts for only about 1% of British Columbians' centre population. The region has a growing tourism industry for those who love outdoor activities such as hiking, mountain biking, and camping. One of the small towns in the region is Vanderhoff, which has a population of about 4,500 people, and the main industries within the community are forestry, agriculture, and mining. This case also involves an infamous Canadian highway, Highway 16, better known as the Highway of Tears. So I'm going to do the first video for you. Right, let's go. We're going to here, go there.
Oh, if you're going to go over the room, you need to give me a place.
Cody Legebokoff of Fort St. James, British Columbia, was your typical country boy. Wore hats, drove a truck, spent his free time fishing and hunting while knocking back a beer. To the people who knew him, no one suspected him to be capable of the crimes he would ultimately commit. But isn't that always what people say? And quite frankly, I don't think Cody deserves to have his life story told. It was a cold winter night on November 27th, 2010. Constable Aaron Keller of the RCMP was traveling along a lonely section of Highway 27, north of the small community of Vanderhoof, British Columbia, when he noticed a truck pulling out from a rarely used logging road. This seemed odd to Keller, and under suspicion of poaching, he pulled the truck over onto the side of the highway and approached. Unbeknownst to Keller, this chance encounter would lead to bringing the career of one of Canada's youngest serial killers to an end. But before we can get into the crime that ultimately resulted in Cody's arrest, we should go back to where it all began. On the early morning of October 27, 2009, an entire year before the events of November 27th, the mutilated body of a woman was found just off the Otway Road pit along the forested area of Moores Meadow in Prince George, British Columbia. The body was the remains of 35-year-old Jill Stacy Suchenko, who was reported missing on October 22, 2009. A loving but troubled mother, she was described by her friends and family as a talented singer with a heart of gold. But Jill sadly fell victim to what so many people do, particularly in the Prince George area, a life of drug addiction and working in the sex trade. Now, I personally used to live in that area for many years and have known many people who fell prey to this lifestyle. It is not uncommon. We now jump ahead a year to October 9th, 2010. Police officer Kent McNeil and a partner were following up on a lead on a missing woman that took them to an area known as Elsie Gun Park, a well-known hiking location just east of Prince George, nearly a perfect diagonal line from where Jill's body was found in the gravel pit. While investigating the area, The officers noted the strong smell of decay in the air, but originally passed it off as garbage visibly littered around the park. After searching the rest of Elsie Gunn, Officer McNeil, with the help of a police dog and its handler, began to follow the smell of rot until they stumbled upon the corpse of 35-year-old Cynthia Mays. Just like Jill, Cynthia was well loved, but had also fallen prey to the world of drug addiction and prostitution. Now, little details as to the cause of Jill's death were public, but Cynthia was a different story. Cynthia's wounds were horrific. She'd been badly beaten to the point that her jaw and her cheekbone were broken. Her throat had been crushed, and a hole was found in her shoulder, which was later determined to have been caused by a picaroon, which is a form of an axe that was found in Cody's apartment with her blood on it. It was also determined by forensics that Cynthia had been dead for a month before she was found. Cody's third presumed victim was 23-year-old Natasha Lynn Montgomery, and I say presumed because to this day Natasha has been missing since August of 2010 and her remains have never been found. However, her blood was found throughout Cody's apartment. She was a mother of two, originally from Qʀᴘዓይb, British Columbia, who unfortunately had a story similar to Jill and Cynthia's: drug addiction and prostitution. Now, Cody clearly had an MO and seemed to target sex workers who were capable of getting him cocaine and other drugs because he was addicted to that, which makes the events of November 27th, 2010 a bit of a weird outlier. As Constable Keller approached Cody's pickup that night, he immediately noticed something wasn't right. Cody not only had blood smeared on his face and his chin, but also on his legs and a pool of it at his feet on the driver's mat. Not something you want to see after pulling someone over who just drove out of a desolate logging road.
Okay, so the Highway of Tears is a 725 kilometres stretch of Highway 16 between Prince George and Prince Rupert, British Columbia, Canada, which has been a location for many unalivings and missing Indigenous women. Beginning in 1970, the highway is extremely remote, and even in the year 2022, there are still large parts of the highway that have absolutely no cell service. According to a 2021 article in the ABC, 70% of Highway 16 already has some cell phone coverage, which near is 70% of that highway has zero phone reception, which is positively terrifying. However, the province of British Columbia partnered with Ottawa, both contributing over $2 million for Rogers Communications to build 12 cell towers in the area. With no cell service, there's a rough estimate, but no one can pinpoint exactly how many women have disappeared on this highway. According to the RAMP project, the number of victims is about 18, while Aboriginal organisations estimate that the number of missing and unalived women was higher than 40. To this day, multiple people have been convicted in cases related to the Highway of Tears. 3 serial unalivers are among those who have been charged: Brian, Peter, Edward, Dennis, Isaac, and today's latest, Cody legebokoff. Cody grew up in the small town of Fort St. James in northern British Columbia, about 10 hours from Vancouver. He came from a loving, respectable family and was well liked among his peers. Cody excelled in sports. He played competitive minor hockey and was a member of his high school snowboarding team, and he enjoyed simple things in life such as hunting, fishing, and camping with his friends and family. He was apparently well liked amongst his peers and showed no predisposition to violence. Shortly after graduating high school, Cody moved to Prince George, which is about 2 hours east of Fort St. James. He shared a house with 3 close friends who were all female. They were all close friends who grew up together in Fort St. James. The girls lived upstairs and he had the basement level all to himself. Cody worked in the parts department at the local Ford dealership and spent a lot of his free time on a site called Qʀᴘṕs, which is a Canadian social networking site that was created in 2003. The site is apparently kind of like MySpace. Apparently it's still a thing, and there are over 3,000 3,009,500 members, although I'm not sure how many of them are actually active. So Cody was apparently very active on the site, and his username was One Country Boy. On a cold, dark night of November 27th, 2010, at around 9:30 p.m, Constable Aaron Keeler of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police was driving along a remote highway in north-central British Columbia. Highway 27. Qʀᴘตู๊r was in his early 20s and was fairly new to the ramp. He had been working in his current position for just 1 year. At this point, he was driving south from Fort St. James toward Vanderhoff, as the snow was lightly falling in the distance of the side of the highway. So I'll just play you guys the rest of this.
In the middle of the night. By this time, another officer had arrived at the scene, and they began searching Cody's truck. In it, they found both a multi-tool and a wrench covered in blood, and, unfortunately, a child's monkey backpack. Clearly, this was fishy. When asked about all the blood, Cody told the officers he had killed a deer and was stated as saying, and I quote, "I'm a redneck, that's what we do for fun." None of this was adding up, but because Cody said that, the officers had a reason to detain him for suspicion of poaching, so he was arrested under the Canada Wildlife Act, and a conservation officer was called to the scene. The conservation officer headed up the road Cody's truck had come from, following the tire tracks in the snow, expecting to come across the remains of a deer, but instead stumbled upon the mutilated body of 15-year-old Lauren Leslie. Lauren was from the small town of Vanderhoof, British Columbia, less than an hour away from Prince George. Now, I lived in Vanderhoof for most of my childhood, so this one hits home to me. Though legally blind in one eye, with only 50% vision in the other, she didn't let that stop her. She was a smart young kid, with dreams of becoming a forensic pathologist when she grew up, which is pretty insane for a 15-year-old. Like most kids her age, she spent a lot of time on social media, which just so happened to be where she met Cody, on the website Nextopia. Eerily, Cody's profile is still viewable on that site as of today. When Leslie's body was found, the scene was absolutely horrific. Her face had been so badly beaten that she was nearly unrecognizable. She'd been stabbed in the neck, and she had been sexually assaulted. Now we come to the trial, and oh boy, was it ever a trial. Cody had every excuse in the book, and his story changed so many times that you'd swear the idiot was trying to write his own choose-your-own-adventure. Originally, he told investigators that he randomly stumbled upon Leslie's body on that logging road and that she had killed herself. Now, how he would know that she killed herself if he just randomly stumbled across her body in the middle of nowhere? Doesn't add up. And when that didn't work, he changed things up and tried to convince them that he was with her, and the intention was to have sex, but all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Leslie just started attacking herself. She just snapped, screaming that she wanted to die. So Cody, being ever the gentleman, helped put her out of her misery. Not only is that stupid, but investigators quickly determined that Leslie had died via blows to the head that she could not have physically done to herself.
Today, the Prince George man took the stand to defend himself against 4 first-degree murder charges. According to his lawyer, Legebokoff chose to testify to give his version of the story.
The question of whether Cody Legebokoff would defend himself was answered within minutes. His defense lawyer, James Heller, called Legebokoff to the stand.
Now, when it came to the murders of Cynthia, Jill, and Natasha, Cody admitted that he was involved, but that he didn't actually kill them. No. Instead, it was 3 drug dealers that the women owed money to. They did the killing. Cody just cleaned up the mess. He told the jury he refused to name the killers, only referring to them as X, Y, and Z. Cody claimed it was because snitches in prison don't fare well. But to be honest, I think it was just because Cody was too stupid to think up 3 names on the spot, and even if he had, he'd likely forget the names or mix up his stories. The jury thought so too, and Cody was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, which equates to 25 years in Canada, at the Kent Institution, the only maximum security prison in British Columbia, also home to infamous serial killer Robert Pickton.
Guilty on all 4 counts. That makes Cody Allen Legebokoff Canada's youngest serial killer. Just now inside the Prince George courthouse, Legebokoff didn't flinch when the verdict was read. Meantime, some members of the gallery started to cry. Some victims' family members were rubbing each other's backs when the verdict was read. Now, earlier today, the jury heard the cross-examination by the Crown of Cody Legebokoff, and the deliberations just started yesterday. And now, they had several questions last night, and that's why court was called back into session. Now, going back to the origins of this case, Legebokoff was arrested back in 2010 on the highway on the way to Fort St. James. This verdict is now the final chapter in the tragic ending to these women's lives.
However, in 2019, Cody was moved to the Warkworth Institution, a medium security prison in Ontario, which understandably did not make the victims' families very happy. 911 has not revealed where her body is. A simple act of kindness, and he refuses to do it. You're already in prison on 4 counts of first-degree murder. Just tell them where her body is so they can bring her home.
So he suddenly noticed a pair of headlights popping up and down as if the vehicle was moving over extremely bumpy terrain at a high speed. As Qʀᴘᴘ got closer to the tree line, he could see that it was actually a black pickup truck driving along a logging road. Suddenly, the black pickup truck emerged from the tree line and darted onto the highway in front of him, and because of the high speed, it slid onto the opposite side of the highway before the driver regained control. So immediately, this set off a red flag for Qʀᴘᴘ. He had an instinct that something was up and decided to follow the truck, but because this was a remote area where people tend to carry poo-poos, Qʀᴘᴘ decided not to pull the truck over just yet. He called in for a fellow constable, Constable Sidhu, to come meet him for backup, and followed the truck for about 10 minutes until he saw Sidhu approaching on the opposite side of the highway. Sidhu turned around and together they turned on their emergency lights with the intention of pulling the truck over, and at this point it was approximately 9:45 p.m. The truck continued for a couple of 100 meters before slowing down and pulling over. As Qʀᴘᴘ walked to the driver's side of the door, he was a little shocked to see the driver dangling his license and registration outside the window already. This was weird to him because usually when he pulls drivers over, they were too nervous to think to have their documents ready, let alone sticking them out the window. This was actually the first time he had ever seen something like this, and so he looked into the driver's window and addressed a young man with shaggy hair. It was 20-year-old Cody legebokoff. Qʀᴘᴘ asked Cody where he's off to in such a hurry, and Cody politely replies that he is just on his way to his grandfather's house. Qʀᴘᴘ notices that Cody is only wearing shorts with a long-sleeved sweater, and this was super odd to him because we're talking about the unaliving of winter. In northern British Columbia, it was freezing cold outside. Temperatures were as low as 30 degrees. So we have this guy wearing shorts in the dead of winter. Seems a little suspicious. So I'll play you another one.
Cody Alan Legebokoff, a Canadian serial killer, was convicted in 2014 by the British Columbia Supreme Court for the heinous murders of 3 women and 1 teenage girl. His crimes, committed between 2009 and 2010, sent shockwaves through the community of Prince George, British Columbia, and across Canada, raising serious concerns about safety and criminal justice. Background and early life. Cody Alan Legebokoff was born on January 21, 1990 in Fort St. James, British Columbia. Little is publicly known about his early life, but he was reportedly 19 years old when he committed his first murder. His seemingly normal upbringing and background made the revelation of his crimes all the more shocking to those who knew him. The crimes, Legebokoff's criminal activities, spanned a brief but intense period, starting in 2009. The victims were Lauren Leslie, a 15-year-old girl, was his final known victim. Her body was found in a remote area near Vanderhoof on November 27, 2010. Jill Stushenko, 35, was found deceased in a gravel pit in Prince George in October 2009. Cynthia Maas, 35, was discovered in a park in Prince George in October 2010. Natasha Montgomery, 23, went missing in September 2010. Her body has never been found, but evidence presented at trial convinced the court of her murder. Arrest and conviction. Legebokoff was arrested on November 27, 2010, initially for the murder of Lauren Leslie. His arrest was somewhat fortuitous. A Royal Canadian Mounted Police RCMP officer stopped him for a routine check when he was driving out of a logging road. The officer noticed blood in his vehicle, which eventually led to the discovery of Leslie's body.
Okay, so I'll carry on. Then Keller noticed a small red smear on the left side of Cody's chin, almost like a shaving cut. He also notices what could be tiny drops of blood on one of his thighs. Then Keller glanced into the truck and spotted an open can of beer behind the driver's seat. He tells Cody that because he saw an open container of alcohol, he was going to need to search the truck. Cody got out of the truck without hesitation, and at this time Keller noticed small droplets of blood on Cody's legs and shoe, and he saw that the floor mat in the truck was wet, with a puddle forming where the driver's feet had been. These were more red flags, and the officers looked at each other, knowing that this was a potentially dangerous situation. Keller then offered to let Cody wait in the back of the cop car while they searched the truck, since it was so cold outside and he was only wearing shorts. But the real reason they wanted him to ensure their own safety and to keep Cody contained as they searched the pickup truck. So Cody agreed to this, and Keller said they needed to search him before he got into the car, which was normal procedure. Keller found a cell phone in one pocket, looked it over and handed it back to Cody. Then he searched the other pockets and found a metal Leatherman pocket tool, which is basically a survival pocket knife, which has several knife blades attached to it. Keller opened the tool and saw a red stain on the inner blades. When asked about it, Cody replied that he had used it on some grouse earlier, and apparently a grouse is a large game bird local to the area, and Keller remarked that was way too much blood for a grouse, and then Cody replied that he had actually used it on a deer before that. So then Keller asked Cody if he has a hunting. He responds no, that he's a redneck and this is just what they do for fun.
Further investigation linked Legebokoff to the other murders, primarily through forensic evidence. In September 2014, he was convicted on 4 counts of first-degree murder. The trial revealed a disturbing pattern of brutal violence against young women, causing widespread alarm and revulsion. Implications and aftermath. The case of Cody Allen Legebokoff is particularly disturbing due to his young age at the time of the murders and the seemingly random selection of his victims. It raised questions about how someone so young could become one of Canada's youngest serial killers. The Legebokoff case brought renewed attention to issues of violence against women in Canada, especially Indigenous women. The region where the murders occurred is part of the so-called Highway of Tears, a stretch of highway in British Columbia where many Indigenous women have gone missing or been found murdered. The conviction of Cody Allen Legebokoff brought some measure of justice for the victims' families, but it also left a lasting impact on the community and the country. It serves as a grim reminder of the presence of evil in seemingly ordinary places and the ongoing struggle to ensure the safety and dignity of vulnerable populations. Societal reactions and measures. The horrors perpetrated by Cody Allen Legebokoff prompted us.
Keller had a feeling Cody was hiding something, so Keller then asked constables to dispatch the British Columbia Conservation Service, since they felt they were dealing with an illegal poacher. The 2 constables then left Cody secure in the police vehicle as they searched his black pickup truck, and in his truck They found the following items. They found 2 crack pipes in the centre console, a 4-pack of mudslides, 2 were open and partly consumed, and a 4-pack of white Russians, both with 2 bottles partially consumed and the other 2 missing. And this is the point where they found something super suspicious, a pipe wrench with blood on it. It's teething behind the centre console. There was also a backpack shaped like a monkey, and inside was a black polka dot wallet. Killer took the ID out of the wallet, and it belonged to someone called Lauren Leslie. Conservation Officer Cameron Hill then arrived at the scene to interview Cody and to get more information about the deer he apparently killed. He asked Cody what his story was and what had happened. So the story that Cody gave was that he met his friend Thomas at work after 4 p.m. in the nearby town of Vandorf. Cody got into Thomas's car and they drove around the area to go hunting after dark together. They had driven to a gravel logging road just outside of town and came across a deer. His friend shot the deer with a pew-pew, and then the 2 loaded the deer in the back of Thomas's truck. And then he took Cody back to his truck, and Thomas... Hold on a minute. No, you're right. I'll get there. No, it's fine. Oh, actually, it's past there.
Oh, mate.
Oh, right.
No good.
No, it's not. It'll be fine. Okay, sorry guys about that. I just had to help my brother with his thing. So where was I up to? Okay, so they thought they were dealing with okay. Monkey and inside was a wall. He asked Cody what his story was and what had happened. So the story that Cody gave was that he met his friend Thomas at work after 4 p.m. in the nearby town of Vandorf. Cody got into Thomas's car and they drove around the area to go hunting after dark together. They had driven to a gravel logging road just outside of town and came across a deer. His friend shot the deer with a pew-pew, and then the 2 loaded the deer in the back of Thomas's truck. And then he took Cody back to his truck. Thomas took off the dead deer, saying that he would dump it off somewhere. Now, Officer Hill had over 30 years experience in law enforcement at this time, so this story sounded super weird to him. Hill then asked Cody what the pipe wrench was for, and Cody said the deer was still alive, so they used the pipe wrench to club the injured deer. After they hunted it down and put it out of its misery, Hill then asked why there was so much blood on the Leatherman tool, and Cody's response was just weird. It's hardly an explanation. He almost sounds just plain arrogant about it. So at this point, none of the story is making any sense whatsoever. But Cody is arrested for violation of the Wildlife Act, illegal poaching. Hill then asked Cody what he was doing up in the logging area anyway, and Cody said his grandfather had told him about a good hunting spot and he was just checking it out in the dark at 9:30 p.m. at night. This guy has an answer for everything. According to the officer, all the logging roads are the same up there and the hunting is good anywhere. So then Hill asked if he was going to find anything unusual up there, and Cody replied no. So Officer Hill left for about 20 minutes trying to retrace Cody's tyre trucks up the logging road. Then it was about 8 to 10 inches of snow on the ground, with about an inch of fresh snow on top of Cody's tyre tracks. So then Hill noticed a few hundred metres ahead that the trucks came to a stop, so he pulled over a few feet behind. He got out of his truck and noticed 2 sets of footprints. He followed the prints towards a desert area of bush until, dense area of bush until he found blood splattered all over the snow, and then he noticed a track in the snow as if somebody had been dragged. He followed these markings into the pitch black forest, weaving through branches with his flashlight until he made a horrific discovery back at the main highway. Killer radios Hill and asked, quote, "Is it what we thought?" And he is it what we thought? And Hill replied, "Worst case scenario, Officer." Hill had found the body of 15-year-old Lauren Leslie. She was partly buried near a gravel pit with her pants and her underwear pulled down to her ankles. Her blonde hair was matted in blood. She had cuts on her neck and her face was so badly beaten it was unidentifiable. At this point, it was now 12:15 at night. So I'll play the next one, and hopefully I can shoot across the road and get what I need to get while it's playing. I think what I'll do is I will play this one.
Hey, hi and hello, welcome back to my channel. I do appreciate you guys stopping by. We're going to be talking about Qʀᴘ Legebokoff's trial and what his new version of the story was. And if you haven't heard this case, I will post a link to the video in the description box below. I would recommend that you watch that before this one so you know the entire story. Also, I want to apologize for making the second video. It wasn't as long as I thought it would be, and I should have just included it in the first video, so oops. Anyway, let's just get right into it.
The trial for 23-year-old Qody Legebokoff is underway in BC Supreme Court in Prince George. Legebokoff faces 4 counts of first-degree murder in relation to the deaths of Jill Stachenko, Natasha Montgomery, Cynthia Ma, and Lauren Leslie between 2009 and 2010. Crown Counsel Joe Temple presented the jury with a snapshot of what he plans to present over the course of the trial. He told the jury 3 of the 4 women died as a result of blunt force trauma. The trial itself is expected to be very involved.
The estimate for the trial that the lawyers and the judge have agreed upon appears to be 6 to 8 months. Well, the Crown is estimating approximately 100 witnesses. That could change over time, just as the estimate of the length of the trial may change, depending on how quickly or slowly the evidence goes in.
So just a brief reminder on what happened. In 2014, Legebokoff was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. During the trial, the Crown called 93 witnesses that included everyone from personal witnesses to forensic experts. On August 1st, 2014, the Crown rested its case, and now it was time for the defense. No witnesses were called, no experts were called to the stand. The only person that was to testify was Qody Legebokoff himself.
It was a major day in the high-profile multiple murder trial of Qody Legebokoff. Today, the Prince George man took the stand to defend himself against 4 first-degree murder charges. According to his lawyer, Legebokoff chose to testify to give his version of the story.
The question of whether Qody Legebokoff would defend himself was answered within minutes. His defense lawyer, James Heller, called Legebokoff to the stand. He admitted to being involved in the deaths of 3 of the women he's accused of murdering.
Now, the defense started with the opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you've heard that the Crown has closed its case. At this point, the defense is not compelled to call any witnesses to put on evidence, but it is our election to do that. He's going to tell you what he has to say about these charges. I'm going to advise you right now that there is going to be much that is incriminating and quite shocking in this evidence. But he is going to tell you his story. His story is different than the Crown's story. It's incriminating. But he's going to tell you what he wants to tell you about these horrible incidences. At that, Legebokoff rose from his seat and went up to the witness stand. He was wearing a suit and a tie and actually seemed relatively calm. Heller, his defense lawyer, asked him about his family background. And it was a normal childhood. He had normal parents that he got along with very well. He stated that they went fishing and went on family vacations. He talked about being avid in sports, and he was on the snowboarding team. He played soccer and minor league hockey for like 14 years. He described a typical Canadian teenager's life. He went on to say that he had a lot of friends and one serious relationship in high school. He said that he started drinking around 13 years old and then later started experimenting with smoking pot. He graduated from Fort St. James Secondary School and then moved out of the family home to Lethbridge, Alberta. He used the website Nexopedia quite a bit and began meeting girls, which according to him is when he became more sexually adventurous and was having sex with at least 6 different girls. Some of them he met online, some of them he met at the bars. Now he moved back to Fort St. James a little while later and started a job at the Ford dealership in Prince George. He rented an apartment house with 3 of his female friends, and it was a party house. Lots of people coming and going, and some of these parties ended up getting quite large. I mean, we're talking over 100 people sometimes attending these parties. Now, he said it was at one of the biggest parties that Legebokoff met X. X? Who the heck was X? Well, that's exactly what the judge thought as he looked over at him with this quizzical look.
Okay, where are we up to, guys?
Sorry.
Cody Stanley, at 6'2", weighing 225 pounds, was officially arrested for first-degree unaliving. Constables Sidhu read him his rights and told him he could contact a lawyer, but Cody doesn't want to talk to a lawyer. First he says he see it and then found it, but I didn't do it. He called 15-year-old child's body at twice what a whole Lauren Don Leslie was 15 years old and a grade 10 student at Netco Valley Secondary School in Vanderhoff. Her parents were divorced and she lived with her mother in the nearby town of Fraser Lake. However, her parents successfully co-parented and she kept a room at her father's place. She was 5'8", with a slender bull, brown eyes and long blonde hair, wavy hair, and probably due to her height, she looked more mature for her age. Lauren had been born with a genetic disorder that left her legally blind with 50% vision in one eye and no vision in the other eye, but she never let her eyesight get in the way. She coped with it well and never let it interfere with her activities. She was described as sensitive, caring, compassionate and full of life. She always wanted people to be treated fairly and spoke up when she felt they weren't. She enjoyed water activities like boating and tubing with her father as well as swimming. But overall she was seen as a normal girl who was generally happy and upbeat. She would also frequent the social networking site Qʀᴘዓይnpedia. She made friends online and one of them testified saying that Lauren was one of their closest friends even though they had never met in person. This friend said that Lauren had always been there for them and that there had even been a time where they were going to end their life and Lauren talked them out of it. On the night of her unaliving at around 8 p.m, Lauren told her mum that she was going to meet a girlfriend for a coffee. Her mum reminded her to be careful and to be home at 1 a.m. This was the last conversation they ever had, but Lauren was not off to see a girlfriend that night. She was going to meet Cody. Lauren and Cody met a few weeks earlier on Qʀᴘዓይnpedia. Cody went by the username One Country Boy and presented himself just as that, an easygoing country boy, and Lauren was looking to meet friends. However, the chats always began with Cody asking really inappropriate sexual questions, but Lauren wasn't interested in that. She either avoided the questions, ignored it, or changed the subject. A few hours before Lauren's unaliving, the text messages between the two started at about 6 p.m. when Cody asked Lauren what she was doing that night. After some back and forth, Lauren invited him to come meet her. So I'm just going to play one more video. I think actually a few more. Hold on. Oh, yeah. Right, yeah.
Multiple murder trial of Qody Legebokoff came to a close today in a Prince George courtroom. A Supreme Court justice sentenced the 24-year-old for the first-degree murders of Jill Stachenko, Natasha Montgomery, Cynthia Mays, and Lauren Leslie.
What started with the discovery of the body of Jill Stachenko in a gravel pit nearly 5 years ago ended today at the courthouse in Prince George. 24-year-old Qody Alan Legebokoff was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years on 4 first-degree murder charges. In handing down the sentence, Justice Glenn Parrott said there was no doubt in his mind all of the murders occurred while Legebokoff was committing or attempting to commit a sexual assault on his victim. Justice Parrott picked apart Legebokoff's testimony, identifying numerous holes in his story and calling his tale of drug dealers X, Y, and Z a fabrication. With his throat choking and a rare show of emotion, Justice Parrott paused to control himself while discussing the grief witnessed through the victim impact statements. These are not the actions of a simple killer, he said, but of something infinitely worse.
You know, there's all kinds of really gory, hoary movies out there. They don't even come close to what this guy's done. You know, like, what is he? Like, you know, what is he?
I'm hoping that today can bring some closure. They've been on a long journey that has been really tough. I'm just really happy that it was a positive outcome for them.
As he was being led out of the courtroom, members of the gallery called out, asking Legebokoff to tell the family where to find the body of Natasha Montgomery. All of the calls seemed to have no effect on the man who killed 4 women in 14 months. Dave Barry, CKPG News.
Qody Alan Legebokoff, a.k.a. the Country Boy Killer, is a Canadian serial killer, murdering 3 women and 1 teenage girl between 2009 and 2010. Jill Stacy Stachenko was found dead in 2009 in a gravel pit on the outskirts of Prince George. Natasha Lynn Montgomery, her body has never been found. Cynthia Frances Moss, 35, her body was found in a Prince George park. Moss died of blunt force trauma to the head and penetrating wounds. She had a hole in her shoulder blade, a broken jaw and cheekbone, and injuries to her neck consistent with someone stomping on it. Lauren Dawn Leslie, 15, murdered on November 27, 2010, and allegedly met Legebokoff online at the website Nexopia. Legebokoff was sentenced to life in prison with no parole for 25 years.
Background: Qody Alan Legebokoff was born on January 21, 1990 in the municipality of Fort St. James, British Columbia, Canada. He was a good kid, as he played ice hockey and had a lot of friends. After he graduated from Fort St. James Secondary School in 2008, he lived in Lethbridge, Alberta for a short period of time before he moved to Prince George, British Columbia. He lived in an apartment with 3 close female friends and worked at a car dealership. He also had a profile on the Canadian social media site Nexopia, calling himself One Country Boy on the website. #X200B. Victims: Jill Stacy Stachenko, a 35-year-old mother of 6 children who worked as an escort. She was last seen on October 9, 2009. Her body was found.
A 24-year-old man on trial in northern BC for the murder of 3 women and a teenager has admitted to being involved in 3 of the killings. Qody Legebokoff has also told the court in Prince George that he did not act alone, but the accused killer refused to say who else was involved, saying he didn't want to go to jail with the reputation of being a rat. Testifying in his own defense, he referred to the others only as X, Y, and Z.
Alright, that's all I've got time for. Thanks again. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day or a great night wherever you are. Thanks. Bye.